When you're doing crossing over work, every now and then you might have an occasion where you feel fearful. This happens, it's natural, we're human, and let's talk today about what you can do about it. When it comes to doing crossing over work, there's going to be a moment. It's very rare, but there's going to be a moment for most, not everyone, but for most people that do this work, on a rare occasion, you're going to have a situation that scares you, that you feel fear. This is natural, it's normal, it comes with the job. And I know so many people that do crossing over work. I do know a couple of individuals that have never really been in a fearful situation or been scared when they're doing crossing over work, and that's a wonderful thing. But I do know individuals who have, including myself. And in this session, what I want to talk about is what to look for, how to prepare for that, and how to take care of that very quickly if it does happen to you. And again, it's rare. I've been doing crossing over work for like 15 years now at this point, and I can count how many times I've been scared on one hand, right? It's very rare. I truly believe that when doing this work, it will not give you what you cannot handle. I have never met somebody that's done this work, that they had a situation, that they came out of it and went, I can't handle that. I've never I've never seen that. And the reason is that we do have a team working with us. Your guides, your spirit guides are working with you. They're very active when it comes to helping people transition and cross over. If that's your intent, if that's what you're focusing on, your team will assist you with that. And they will also make sure not to put you in a situation that you can't handle or that you're actually going to be harmed. It's not going to happen because what good is that? Right? What good is that? If they know that your intention is to help people cross over, they're not going to put you in a situation that when you're done with it, you're like, that's it, never doing it again. Right? They actually want you to be productive in this process and in this work and help more people. Now, this work is very, very rewarding. And so I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say it's all perfect, right? But I will say 98% of the time when we're doing this work, we are submersing ourselves in unconditional love. We're caring for another. We're helping them find their way. We're encouraging. We're their cheerleader. We're their unconditional loving kind of person to try to help them. And that's very rewarding, as people should help each other. That's how it should be. But on a rare occasion, and I've experienced them myself, you're going to find a situation that takes you by surprise. And now that is the key to this entire session. The words takes you by surprise. Fear, being frightened, being scared is only going to happen in a crossing over experience when you don't you didn't see it coming, or you don't know, or it just really kind of takes you by surprise. Because you can go into a situation, let's say a friend of yours has a home, they move into a new home, right? And they start to have a lot of paranormal activity. I don't know, maybe they do some research and they realize that the people that lived in the home before were violent or angry. If you were going to go to their home knowing that, then this isn't going to take you by surprise. The energy of the spirits in that home are not going to surprise you. You're going to feel their anger. You're going to feel that they were probably violent. You're going to feel that kind of aggression, but you already knew it, right? So you're stepping into it. Awareness will eliminate fear. So in those situations, you already know it. You go in there, and on your way to a situation or stepping into a situation, your intuition might pick up on someone who was aggressive, or someone who was a perpetrator, or someone who was a predator. It might pick up on that before you ever, get near the spirit or near the person that's transitioning to the other side and crossing over, right? You might feel that early. And in that situation, you kind of are just stepping forward, dealing with what you're dealing with, right? It's like dealing with kids. If you have a kid that is running across the house towards you, laughing and giggling, you know what to expect. If you have a kid running towards you, throwing a temper tantrum, screaming, when they get to you, you know what to expect. You can see it kind of coming. You're prepared for it, right? Same with crossing over work. If you step into something that you know might be heavy, might be dark, might be, a little bit more frightening, you're prepared for that. You can do GCP in such a way, and you can say, okay, I'm stepping into my job to do this cleanup work. clean up this area, clean everything up, and help this soul to be able to go home. But on a rare occasion, you either are going to be kind of off energetically that day, and perhaps something will take you by surprise, or you can get, I don't know, nonchalant about the work and just kind of get so used to it that you're like, oh, yeah, I got this, no big deal. And then you step in and something might take you by surprise. Or it's just straight up going to be that you're doing the work and everything's fine, and then all of a sudden something shows up that wasn't there before and it takes you by surprise. So there's all of these possibilities, and I want to give you just brief examples of each. I remember when we went to a location, and this was in, if you look back to the Otherside Chats, episode 7, I believe, called A Safe Walk in Maine. This is the story that I'm referencing. So this was the one where we went up to a house in Maine, and the energy of the entire property really held an energy of paranoia. And as a result of that, we didn't know that. So we stepped in and we slowly but surely all started to experience our own paranoia. And toward the end of that visit, I remember my spirit guide. Now, mind you, my spirit guide, right, who I'm completely safe with, stepped in and said, Bo, you've got to go now, right? But my paranoia translated that as like, we got to go now. We're not okay. So I had fear until we left there. That was an example of feeling very human fear because you're translating what's coming through in that fear-based frame of mind because of the energy that you're in. We weren't aware that this energy was filled with paranoia. We just simply weren't aware. So we kind of got into it. And the next thing you know, we were uncomfortable. In this situation, what do? Recognize when you start to feel uncomfortable. And you can even look back then, and I know moments, like I can remember moments saying to other people in the group, like, this, I feel paranoid or uncomfortable, or I think she's experiencing some paranoia too. And so when you have that moment, find your awareness, find your center, and say, here's what I'm feeling. That's where you stop, you reset, you GCP, and then again, all of the energy is pushed out and you are solid once again. Now the paranoia energy is outside of your space is clear, you're going to be able to see more clearly. If I would have done that, which I didn't at that time, but wow, did I learn, right? But if I would have done that in that situation, I would have been able to see clearly that Big Dog was simply saying, it's the end of the visit. It's time for you to go. There was no fear in what he was saying. I translated it as fear. So this is an example of getting or being in a place or a space where the energy of the space is fearful or scared or paranoid. And when we start to feel that way ourselves, GCP quickly, because that's going to separate you from the energy around you and you're going to start to see it clearly. It will also eliminate the fear. The second example I gave you, getting nonchalant. Yes, indeed. Bo's going to give you an example of that too, because that was me. I had a moment years back. This was another big learning moment for me, but I had a moment years back where I had done a crossing over earlier in the day, and I had done a few earlier that week as well. And I don't know, I was just starting to feel like, yeah, I got this. I got this. I know what I'm doing. It's this. And I just hadn't really had a very challenging clearing in a long time. And so I felt really comfortable with myself and what I was doing. And I stepped into the second clearing of the day. I got to their home. I stepped in completely unaware that the spirit that was there, that was stuck, is very aggressive, like just not nice, right? And this one actually was the one with the serial killer, which I believe is episode 12, the serial killer's anniversary. It was this one. I walked through the front door kind of with this mentality of like, oh, I do clearings all the time. I got this, right? And I didn't really adequately GCP. I didn't really adequately step into it with a fresh slate, asking my guides, what do I do? How do I approach the house? And I was usually really good about that. But for some reason, I was kind of just getting relaxed with it, which I never have again. But I walked in the front door and was instantly kind of bombarded with this spirit's energy. I felt I had these sensations that happened, and all of a sudden I was in this state of like panic, right? And I remember I did what I was supposed to do, and this is actually what I'm going to suggest as well. I stepped out of the situation, right? And I took a deep breath, GCP'd, went right back to ground zero and said, okay, guides, what do I do? Where am I at? And I put an extra like layer of protection around my GCP. And then I went back in, and then I was able to handle the entire rest of the situation without feeling another ounce of fear, because I knew at that point what I was getting into. See where I'm saying? If it takes you by surprise, you might have a human reaction of fear. Step away for a moment, GCP, go back in, the fear will be gone. Okay. And then there's also the time where you could be, in the middle of a clearing and, working with a spirit, helping clear energy maybe out of a building or something like this. And then something can take you by surprise. And I remember working with a child. I was a young boy who, I kind of, yeah, I let my guard down a little bit because he was stuck, and I'm a mom, right? And so I was feeling, I really, really want to help you. I really, really want to, help cross you over. Are you okay? And I started to kind of have that, like, I started to open up energetically with like kind of bleeding heart toward this kid. And he like lunged at me, right? And like, not physically and not in reality, but it was like he bit me. And I remember being frightened by that and taken aback because I almost felt like I had been lured into this, like, oh, it's a sweet little boy, right? And here I'm okay, right? So we have to remember that when we're doing our job, we have to stay protected, stay in our GCP bubble. We have to stay really centered of all possibilities, and when we get pulled too far in an emotional direction, that's a sign that we need to pull back again. Because when we can get too emotional in these sessions, that's when something can take you by surprise. And then you didn't see that coming and it frightens you. So if you see the running thread through all of these, it's really the human state of mind. When something comes through, it's not something really to be fearful of. It's our human reaction of fear to the energy or the moment happening. I can't say to somebody, "Oh, be fearless," right? Or, "Oh, you're never gonna have a moment where you might, ugh," but you will always be taken care of by your guides. You will always be supported. And a couple tools moving forward, you're going to be able to handle the situations that are presented. And again, very rare. This is very rare that this happens, but it does happen. Here I am, having done crossing over work for 15 years, and I have just a handful of situations that took me by surprise and caused me to have a moment of fear. There were many more where it was like, I knew that the person I was helping cross over was an aggressor, or, was a perpetrator, or was, unhappy with me being there, trying to help them. But there's no fear in that. I trusted my GCP. I stayed in the moment. Here's your tools: GCP, trust your GCP, stay in the moment. And when you start to get pulled very far emotionally in one direction, come back to center, right? That first example, I was pulled into paranoia. I came back to center. Well, actually, I didn't come back to center, but if I went back there again, I would have done this because I was still relatively new back then. With the young boy, my emotions, just that bleeding mom heart, I was pulled far into those emotions, and so I was, startled by what I experienced. In these moments, being prepared, focused, centered is what's going to help you to not be surprised or be taken by surprise, and being focused. So, and when it comes to the serial killer one, for example, that was a learning lesson too. A wonderful one of humility that says, doesn't matter how long you do this work. You always got to check in with yourself. You always got to go in the clean slate, knowing that every situation can be different. Make sure that you do your tasks. Make sure you GCP. Make sure you ground into Mother Earth. Make sure you put up that protective bubble before you go in. It's going to be a lot easier. So, if you're doing this work and you come across a situation that causes you some fear, take a step back, get yourself back to center, do GCP, and the second you do that, it'll fade away. It'll fade away. Because in the end, really what matters with doing this work this is such an important thing for you to remember. You have a physical body. You are anchored into this agreed upon reality. The spirit that you're helping cross over does not have a physical body. They are not anchored into this agreed upon reality. And as a result of that, you have say. You have control over what happens in this material world, this agreed upon reality, contrary to what ghost stories will tell you, contrary to what the movies will tell you. Not a dig on the movies. Movies are fun, but it's not like what you see in the movies. It's not what pop culture tells you. The reality is you are not only a spirit, but you are a spirit anchored into a physical body, anchored into this agreed upon reality. What your intent is stronger than any other spirit's intent. So if you tell them, get out, they're gone. If you back up from the situation, then you are backing up from the situation. They can't continue to come at you. You have a lot more control because you're anchored into the material world. Please keep that in mind when you do this work. So with that said, let's summarize. You might, this is a might, have a moment of fear in doing this work. Again, it's a might. It's not a promise. You will never, ever be given anything that you can't handle. And you are always welcome to take a step back, reset, GCP, and then step back in to do the work. It will take care of it. It really, really will. And you got this. You got this. You're out there, you're doing the work. So important, right? Because we got to take it from scary to non-scary, because scary is like, there's a ghost, woo, right? And like I tell you over and over again, I love this sentence so much because it means so much to me. Ghosts are people too.
This podcast has been brought to you by the Crossing Over Community, a loving and safe community of individuals who are shining light on the beautiful process of the death transition. Members of this community are amazing people just like yourself. Join the discussion, access more in-depth trainings, and be a part of this growing movement by joining the Crossing Over Community today.